All right. In case we haven't had a chance to meet, I'm Rebecca Begalius, certified holistic stress coach and founder of Rested Edge Wellness. We're going to be together for just about an hour, not even. We'll finish before the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of your time. Fun fact, I've spent the better part of the last 25 years in the presence of high-powered, ambitious, driven women. And I am really proud to count myself in that group too. In my, what I like to call my past life, I was a TV news producer for close to a decade. And then I worked as an executive in media relations and crisis communications for many years. So you want to talk about high stress, high stakes. My days in the newsroom were literally timed to the second. So the shows went to air and then they went to black, which is what they call it when a live show is done for the day, whether I had my shit together or not. And if I got something wrong, like a wrong fact, a wrong name, it could have easily cost me my job. And throughout the day, I made split-second decisions when there was breaking news and we were live on air. I figured out how to fill time when a reporter didn't make their spot. High stakes, high stress. I loved it and I was really good at it. And then I wanted to try something new. So I moved into the corporate communication side and did the PR and crisis comms. And sadly, in both news and as a communications executive, I watch some of the most ambitious, highly respected, and high functioning women I know either leave their careers early or suffer through chronic stress, burnout, and health crises under the pressure to perform. Women around me treated themselves like productivity machines, and quite frankly, they still do. Some had families or partners at home, some did not, but it was always the same game. So it was always try to stay balanced in a world where there's constant demand for better, faster, stronger. Get one last thing done before falling into bed bone tired and still waking up feeling like you got hit by a bus. Or I used to do a lot, driving towards the weekend when you're finally going to let yourself rest, but then cramming and jamming those 2 days with all the stuff you didn't get done during the week. Or what happened to me some of the times was wanting to crawl under the covers and tell everyone to go away. If this is you, my friend, are not alone. And I want to just start sharing my slides with you now. This is from a 2023 American Psychological Association study. So it happened just last fall. And it said, women have the overwhelming sense of being burdened by the responsibilities of home life while trying to advance and often just maintain a standard of excellence in their careers. And this is huge. Among the key findings, women were more likely to strongly agree that no one understands how stressed they are. Can anybody relate to that? Feeling kind of like nobody gets it, right? It finally caught up with me, I'm going to say about 8 years ago, when I was working as a communications vice president at a extremely toxic private company. I had also shifted in the span of months from being the single 30-something girl in the city to being a stepmom of 3 little kids living in the burbs. And I was trying to start my own business on the side to get out of that toxic workplace that I mentioned. I ignored the signs of burnout or chronic stress, not because I didn't want to deal with them, but because I, quite frankly, didn't know what it was. And I didn't know I had a choice. I just thought, there must be something wrong with me. I must be broken. I must have done something wrong along the way. Because while on the outside, I looked like this, here's about where I was at on the inside. Anybody else relate to this? Drop me a yes in the chat if you've experienced any of these symptoms. No exaggeration. These are symptoms I saw outlined while working with a client in my former business. And I was like, oh shit, it's me. Right? Like brain fog, was having trouble sleeping, always exhausted. I was always in pain. I felt like I didn't know where the aches and pains were coming from. My back, my legs, I would work out and feel like crap afterwards when you're supposed to get energy from that, right? My weight started climbing. I wasn't in the mood. And so I felt a bit of relief knowing I had something to kind of work with, like, okay, this stress thing, I've got to start looking into this. But unfortunately, I went wide instead of deep. And I bought into the cultural narrative that the newest diet trend or supplement or meditation technique would make me healthier, happier, and more successful. I went quick fix. So keto. Then, ironically and super jarring for my system, I went vegan. I tried cutting all the sugar. I signed up for unlimited yoga and spin. No, didn't work. So I looked for things like time management tools to help with the procrastination I was experiencing in my business. Like the list was really long. And you know why the diets and the yoga and the changing jobs and the time management techniques didn't work for me? And I'm guessing if you've tried these too, they haven't worked for you either because you're here, is because this. Stress mastery is an inside job. So is healing from chronic stress and burnout. Think about it. All the things you've ever done to try to relieve or manage stress in the past have been external to you. So doubling down on work to get ahead so you can finally rest. It doesn't work because the to-do lists never end. Changing jobs. Maybe you move to a different real estate company, a different bank, or you even start your own business. But eventually you fall back into the same patterns and stress cycles. Maybe you have a few glasses of wine at the end of the day, but that doesn't work because while it feels good going down, it kind of makes a wreck of your sleep, right? Time management tools don't work because it's not about the amount of time that you have. It's about the energy, the amount of energy that you have. And trying to control everyone and everything around you doesn't work because the only thing you can truly control is yourself. And so we try all these things, but then you never feel secure and not busy, no matter how much you have. You're still exhausted and depleted at the end of the day, and you still feel stretched thin and resentful. You still feel like if you slow down, everything's going to fall apart. And when I use words like, I remember when these came up for me, like alignment and harmony in life, like you roll your eyes, right? But the fact is, you're here with me today, and that to me says that you've got some sense of hope that there's a better way to do this. And so I want you to think about, as we're going through, the next bit of time together, I want you to think about how you're spending your time trying to solve stress outside of you, trying to control others, predict the future, work harder to get more done. Shortly, we're going to dig into what gets us to the point of chronic stress and burnout and what it means to actually solve for stress internally. And I'm going to share some strategies for how you can start your stress mastery journey, even when you've got a lot on the line at work, at home, in your relationships. But what I really want you to take away from this masterclass, if there's just one thing, is really a sense of confidence and deep, deep knowing that even though most of the stressors in your life, they're likely not going away, you can change how you respond to them. You can change how you show up. That is how you honor your ambition without burning out. It's how you can have that high stress, high stakes career or business you love without sacrificing everything else, including your health and well-being. Because the fact is, when you sacrifice your well-being, you sacrifice your well-doing. When you're not well, you cannot do well. I often say when I'm working with my executive leader clients, like how you feel is how you lead. I like to think of it kind of like a pro athlete, because at the end of the day, like really think about it, you're the pro athlete in your life, right? Does anybody here watch F1 Drive to Survive on Netflix? I love that show. My husband and I are addicted to it. You wouldn't think that driving a car is athletic, but the cognitive load of staying on those tracks and knowing like how fast you can be going around corners and passing someone at 220 miles an hour, like those guys are fully on when it's time to perform. when it's time to race through those complicated courses, or when they're off the track and, doing a tough workout, and they're fully off when it's time to chill out and recover. They've got higher highs and lower lows than most people who spend their days just kind of bumping along the surface, feeling the stress of their day-to-day most days. And those guys, those pro athletes, they can purposely choose, and the key word here is purposely, what response to have in a given situation. They notice the pressure of performance and competition and high expectations, but it doesn't get to them. In fact, it's actually energizing a lot of the time, right? So once the challenge is passed, they can walk off the field or the track, or in real life, that you can walk out of the office and feel fully relaxed again. And you can too. And I like to think of it as like, what we're going to talk about today, this kind of new and refined and elevated approach to your work in life that doesn't require you to sacrifice your success, and in fact, can supercharge it. But first, we've got to recognize 3 truths that keep smart women stuck in the stress loop. First one, I like to call these actually truth bombs. Stress mastery requires change, and change, as we know, is hard. A lot of my clients come to me wanting to experience change that feels effortless. They're kind of at the end. They're done with struggling and feeling miserable when they try to make changes that make them less stressed in their lives. In my one-to-one program, I work with everyone from therapists, yes, therapists, to Wall Street investment bankers, people who are married, who are single, who are parents to humans, who are pet parents. You can label them as many times as you want. And the fact remains, and this is key to making change, that everyone's brain works relatively the same. Our brains are hardwired to keep us where we are. So yay, fun. Change of any kind is hard because our brains are wired to what we call seek safety and to protect us. It's why we're super excited and motivated to start going to the gym again. And then 2 weeks later, we're like hitting snooze and saying, it's okay, I'll go tomorrow. Or we promise ourselves we're going to shut down work by 5 p.m. and we do it for maybe a week, but then a deadline comes along and we find ourselves at our desk at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday, munching on a granola bar for dinner. Our brains view any change from the status quo as unsafe, even if the status quo isn't helpful or healthy. But we now know, thanks to research in neuroplasticity, that our brains can develop new connections and pathways to support new habits and behaviors. We're not stuck with our current way of thinking or way of doing things that ultimately leaves us stressed out and anxious and overwhelmed. We can change, but it's challenging, which is why stress mastery requires real practice. And I say real because I don't want you to confuse reading a book about stress or even attending this masterclass as practice. You want to build strength? You can't read a book about weight training and magically grow a 6-pack, right? Like stress mastery comes from regular practice of small steps over time. It's about building emotional resilience day after day. You won't stop having tough emotions. That's not what this is about. You're still going to get frustrated, angry, pissed off, annoyed. But when you do, you'll be able to recover from those emotions faster. You'll be able to think clearer in tough situations, have more focus. We already know, I told you, the stressors in your life, they're not going anywhere, a lot of them. Our goal isn't eliminating all the stressors, it's growing your capacity to handle them. So back to that lifting weights analogy, right? Like you start with 15-pound dumbbells for your bicep curls, and a few weeks later, you notice, oh, these weights actually feel a bit lighter. They didn't get lighter, they're still 15 pounds. You grew your muscles. They're stronger now. So the weights feel lighter. It's the same thing with stress mastery. You grow your capacity to handle stress so that when you're up against tight deadlines, when you're dealing with demanding clients, when you're getting asked to do one more thing, whether it's at home or at work, you can show up in alignment. You can respond instead of react. And the third truth bomb, stress mastery requires a radical commitment to self-mastery. No pressure, right? Self-mastery, not to be confused with perfection. There's no such thing. This is not about never failing or never making mistakes. Where stress mastery is won and lost is in your willingness to show up for yourself and intentionally create the state that you want to show up in the world. You can only do that when you know without a doubt what's most important to you in this life, what you will and will not tolerate, your non-negotiables, and that your value has nothing to do with your productivity or your output. How does it feel when I say that? Your value has nothing to do with your productivity or output. And at your high level, pardon me, at your high level, no one is coming along to tell you that you're enough. They're not going to say, oh, sweets, you've done so much, you should take a break. No, they're just going to keep taking because you've shown them that you can perform under pressure and you've become a reliable shoulder they can lean on. But the pressure is causing the foundation to crack, even if others don't see it, right? On the outside, you look hardworking and punctual and organized and detail-oriented, competent, ambitious. You might even identify as a perfectionist, like you're so good at what you do. Maybe you think you have a type A personality, and that's what people say about you too. But inside, this is what's going on. You're overwhelmed, you're doubting yourself, you're saying yes when you don't want to, you're having difficulty sleeping, can't relax, and you feel irritable and tense. So you need to believe that it's not only okay, but crucial that you stop giving to everyone but yourself. Making a radical commitment to self-mastery is critical to stress mastery. We don't get there without it. You've got to be okay with saying no and potentially disappointing others so that you don't disappoint yourself. You've got to believe that rest is a birthright, not a luxury or a reward. And you've got to decide that you're done living a frantic, burnout-inducing, sleep-deprived life. So how do we get there? I've seen this quote attributed to Jim Kwik, so we'll go with that because I wanted to use it, and I like to make sure that I give credit. I think it's really fitting. If an egg is broken by an outside force, life ends. If broken by an inside force, life begins. Great things always begin from the inside. And it's the same thing for stress mastery and excelling in high stakes situations without burning out. We've got to start inside. We've got to tap into the most overlooked and underused system we have available to us every day of our lives. I'm talking about your autonomic nervous system, or your inner COO, as I like to call her. She holds the key to feeling freaking fantastic while performing at your peak. Because that's what this is all about, right? Like that's what we want. We want to master the stress so that we can ultimately feel good and do our best and say we're living the life we desire. So your inner COO affects your entire way of being. She's involved in your day-to-day activities. And to be effective, she requires strong leadership and excellent communication skills. I use COO here, not CEO, because of the amount of activity that the COO, the chief operating officer in a business, touches every day, right? They're the ones, like I said, that require the super strong leadership, the excellent communication skills to keep all of the parts and pieces moving in the way that they need to. But most businesses, they have some kind of onboarding process when they hire a COO. In life, our inner COO often flies blind. Like no one teaches us how to operate our nervous system, right? Anyone have teenagers in the house? We were just helping my 16-year-old stepson choose his grade 12 courses the other day. And it was like, okay, pre-calculus, physics, chemistry, food sciences. I think he had to take gym in there too. And I was like, Where's the nervous system 101? Like, can we make this required learning, please? Please. You'd think there would be something, not even in grade 12. Like, I would love this to be a class every year from, starting at kindergarten. Anyway, you think there would be something to help us figure out the system that determines the thoughts you're having, your perception of yourself, others, and the world around you. Every behavior you ever had or inhibited, every feeling you've ever experienced, how you perceive and experience time. Basically, your entire human experience is based here. If our inner COO or our nervous system isn't experiencing safety, we won't be able to handle difficult situations with ease instead of panic and reactivity. Here's what I mean. So this system is made up of your brain, your spinal cord, and trillions of nerves that stretch everywhere, like roads and paths, kind of connecting every part of you. It's like a supercharged direct message system, right? Communicating to all the different areas of your body. It controls what you think, what you feel, and what your body does. It allows you to walk and talk and swallow and breathe and learn. It controls how well you sleep, your hormone function, your ability to speak your truth, your emotional processing. And it's ultimately responsible for how you handle stress. So I wanted to share quickly with you the language of the nervous system. And this is a system courtesy of neurosomatic intelligence. So you get a message or an input, could be through any of your senses, your thoughts, the food you eat, something that touches you, something you hear, right? Your brain's number one job is to decide or interpret, is this input safe or unsafe? That's the only question it asks in that millisecond. Based on that, it generates an output. So think of your hand, touching a hot stove. So through touch, your nerves sense something hot. They kick into gear. They send a message up to your brain. Your brain reads the message and thinks, hot, danger, and knows you need to move your hand away fast. So it then sends its own message back down through the spinal cord and nerves to the muscles in your hand, telling them move, right? And you do. So why are we talking about heat and danger in relation to stress mastery? I know you're not out there touching hot stoves anymore. You learned that lesson early. It's because the same system that affects your physical actions also influences your emotions and how you see yourself and how you see the high stakes situations around you. And your brain, when it's making that interpretation, it doesn't differentiate between physical, emotional, psychological, or relational threats. And we've all got our own internal threat bucket. This is a place where all of your inputs, including your stressors and experiences past and present, this is where they go to hang out. And when too many of the inputs you're receiving from your thoughts and the world around you are deemed unsafe by your brain, your threat bucket fills up faster than you want it to. And if that threat level gets too high, it starts to go over that black dotted line you see there. The brain says, nope. And the bucket overflows with outputs that you don't like, or what you might have heard of as nervous system dysregulation. Because of modern day stressors, things like screen time, not enough sleep, got divorce, entrepreneurship, unexpected deadlines, we've got mental health issues with our kids, our own health issues, we're involved in elder care. So many of us are walking around with a bucket that's either overflowing or ready to overflow as soon as one more drop hits. And that one more drop could literally be someone cutting you off in traffic, could be a lineup at the grocery store that's too long and you're already in a hurry, right? We don't do what we need to do to lower that threat level. We start to identify with being high strung and stressed out. We start living our lives that way all the time. I want to just note here that this internal system is never wrong. Those outputs, they're not wrong. They're actually not bad. They're just not what you want. They're simply your brain keeping you safe. They're your brain saying, hey, like threat level 10, we're going into survival mode or protective mode to try to get your attention. And when we're in survival mode, we cannot be in performance mode at the same time. Anybody remember that Reese Witherspoon movie, Sweet Home Alabama? where the dad's like, you can't ride two horses with one ass, sugar bean. That was a terrible accent. He was talking about her choosing between two love interests, but same. Like, we can't be in both camps at the same time. Goes for survival and performance modes too. You cannot be acting like the leader, the business owner, the student, the parent, the partner, the high achieving, responsive, strong woman you want to be when you're in survival mode. So we've got to actively work to manage our nervous system or lower that threat level. We've got to put our inner COO back in charge. Otherwise, all those non-life threatening threats, the to-do list that never ends, the colleague who keeps walking into your office when you're trying to concentrate, no break between meetings. Maybe it's a new deadline when you're trying to get out of there, right? Maybe it's traffic when you're like running late for your kids' assembly. They trigger a release of chemicals that prepare the body for challenge. So we go into a stress response, which is fine in the short term. It's actually what we're supposed to do. But for most of us who take on too much for too long, we get stuck there. And that prolonged stress response makes simple tasks super daunting. We end up putting in the bare minimum. We detach from outcomes we used to care about. And in some cases, we actually fantasize about leaving it all behind. When we put our inner COO in charge, we create space for nervous system regulation, which is at its core the ability to move flexibly between different states of emotional arousal in response to stressors. When your inner COO is in charge, you can move through stressors quicker. The triggers still happen. Emotions come up, anger, sadness, frustration, but you're able to encounter a stressful situation or a moment of discomfort, and you can adapt so that you're not so overwhelmed. You don't dwell or overthink or ruminate. So you're not only calmer, but you're more focused and clear and creative and confident and physically strong. So managing your nervous system, not a one size fits all. I wish I had a silver bullet for you to say, okay, just do this, but you've got to experiment and find what works for you. And what works for you isn't going to work for everyone else around you. But I want to share with you 3 of the most effective and accessible ways to start working with your nervous system so you can get a head start on your own stress mastery journey so that your inner COO is in charge when you need her most. So number 1, show, don't tell. Here's what I mean. The language of the nervous system is not cognitive. It lives in your body. It's a felt sense. So 80% of the communication running through your nervous system goes from your body to your brain. And just 20% goes from your brain to your body. This is why we cannot think our way out of stressful situations. We have to show our system that what we're experiencing isn't life-threatening using a bottom-up approach, working with our bodies. And this helps move our nervous system from its 2 different states that it has. The sympathetic state, which is that fight, flight, freeze, stress response you've heard of, back to parasympathetic or rest and digest, or a more neutral kind of calm state. So there are signals we can send both in a moment of stress and on a regular basis so that when the moment of stress comes up, we've already created flexibility and capacity. This is when I was earlier talking about the input, interpretation, output. This is why understanding that and understanding that 80% of the inputs come through the body is so important. So how do we show, not tell? Well, consistently getting a good sleep, which is the great paradox in all of this, because when we're stressed, our sleep suffers, and when our sleep suffers, our stress capacity decreases. And side note, when I started doing this work, I was actually working with people on sleep. Like I would talk about how I was a certified sleep coach, and primarily women would come to me because they were having trouble sleeping. But then the more I coached and learned about people, the more I realized that while sleep was an issue, it wasn't the issue. And this is what I experienced for myself as well. But I thought, okay, maybe it's just me. And then no, it's not. A a lot of the people, a lot of the women I was working with, they weren't sleeping properly because, you guessed it, they were living in a constant kind of like red alert state, and their bodies weren't cooperating when bedtime came. So that's why we tackle the stress, and it helps with the sleep. We can incorporate doable micro moments of joy and fun, which many of us have forgotten how to do. Maybe we haven't forgotten, we've just not forgotten how to do them, but forgotten how to take the time and choose ourselves, right? But they make a monumental difference in managing our nervous system. So maybe for you, it's something like grabbing a paintbrush or getting time in nature. That's my number one. I have a girlfriend who loves wet felting. It doesn't have to be a craft though. It's just like something you love to do that isn't taxing on your nervous system. My husband loves washing cars. It's very regulating and relaxing for him. So what is it that you can start to incorporate? And it doesn't have to be, an hour or 2 hours. It's like, what can you do starting for 5 minutes once a day, and start incorporating and sending that signal that you're okay. And you can regulate your nervous system in real time by noticing the physical sensations and recognizing your stress response activation. So if you think about like, what did you do the last time you left a super intense meeting with a coworker or got off a client call that really kind of tested your patience? Did you go straight to your inbox? Or maybe you opened up your snack drawer? Did you walk out of your office and snap at someone? No judgment. I've been there. When we take a beat to notice our stress response, we can then move our bodies in a way that allows us to discharge that stress, depending on what's happening for us. So if we're angry or anxious, we can go for a brisk walk. And I want to just reiterate here, like 5-10 minutes. Doesn't have to be an hour. We can shake our arms and legs. Like if anybody has a dog, cats do it too, right? If you ever noticed how they shake their heads, their kind of whole body shakes, that's releasing stress. You can put on some music that you love for just a few minutes, do a quick dance. You can play with your pet, you can play a sport, you can do a HIIT workout. If we're feeling kind of hopeless or disconnected in the moment, you can take more or less a slower walk, spend some time in nature, do some relaxation, breathing exercises, listen to more soothing music, right? Cuddle instead of play. When we move or discharge stress, we signal safety and we move ourselves back into that parasympathetic state that's a much more pleasant and productive space to operate from. And we can show our brain we're safe by doing regular neural exercises too, that kind of rewire the signal from our body to the brain. So the brain starts to interpret those less threatening signals as safe, not unsafe, and helps us act accordingly. Maybe that's working with your accessory nerve to help your shoulders relax. Maybe it's stimulating your vagus nerve. There's all kinds of things we can do to send those signals of safety through moments, minutes of neural exercises during our day. Second thing we can do is notice our thoughts. So simply trying to talk your way out of being stressed doesn't work. We know that, right? Because there's not a lot of communication that's going directly first initially from the brain to the body. When we try to do that, we feel exhausted and like something's wrong with us. But when you start to cultivate an awareness of what you say to yourself and the thoughts you're choosing to believe, that alone will significantly shorten your path to stress mastery. We speak, they say on average about 16,000 words out loud a day. Obviously, some people speak more than others, but our internal thoughts produce tens of thousands more. And most of the time, it's total BS. Thoughts are not facts. There are voice of consciousness kind of hammering us with unreliable information based on past stories, based on experiences, conversations, expectations that have nothing to do with what's going on in your present moment. So becoming aware of that voice and approaching it with compassion, huge, huge, very key to changing how the brain interprets our thoughts, safe or unsafe, and then what actions or behaviors we take from there. It's key to increasing the capacity in our threat bucket. Remember that threat bucket? And lowering those threats down. When we do that, we change our response to a stressful situation because we're not just ready to overflow. So maybe you woke up this morning thinking, oh my gosh, I have so much to do today. If you listen to that thought and take it at face value, your activation or your dysregulation will increase. Your threat bucket starts to fill up. So something I invite you to try instead is noticing the thought and then separating from it. So let's try it right now. You're all on mute. It's all good. So think of one distressing thought that you might have. Maybe it's, I'll never get it all done, or, you know, there's never enough money, or there's never enough time, or I'm not good enough, I can't do it. Think of one kind of distressing thought that you have. And then I want you to, if you can, where you are, I know some of you are not in private place, say the thought out loud. You can just whisper it. And then just notice what happens in your body. Does your heart start to beat a bit faster? Is there a knot in your throat or your stomach when you think about that? That is the power of your thoughts. They alone can produce an unwanted stress response or output. And when you listen to them, it will always, always increase your dysregulation. So instead, let's try saying, I'm noticing I'm having the thought that. And you might even in your head, if you're in the moment, you're able to close your eyes and just notice that you're having the thought. You might even picture it like in the middle of a cloud, kind of passing you by. I'm noticing I'm having the thought that I don't have enough time. I'm noticing I'm having the thought that there's not enough money. Do this 3 times. And what you'll hopefully notice is that it helps you separate from this thought, so it's not so dysregulating. Conversely, when you're feeling dysregulated, like when your heartbeat is higher than it should be, you've got those sweaty palms, or you're feeling kind of dissociated, notice, if you can, what you've been thinking that you haven't been conscious of. And now that you know how to do this, the cool thing is you have this extra bit of awareness, and you will hopefully start to notice these things that you weren't noticing before. You can use this tool to separate from that dysregulation and start moving back into that parasympathetic state. And number 3, we've got to shift your stress perception. How we think about stress has a huge impact on how we handle it. Health psychologist, one of my absolute favorite stress researchers, a woman by the name of Kelly McGonigal, she's written a book called The Upside of Stress. She tells us that the belief that stress is harmful makes it unhealthy, not the stressor itself. And this is a biggie too. As tough as everyday stress can be to cope with, sometimes we would be a lot worse without it. We've got a stress response for a reason. So I want you to think about stress as serving a purpose. It prepares our mind and body for what we need to do in the moment and moments ahead, right? It gives us that surge of energy and clarity that we need. It gives us the physical and mental resources we need to meet a challenge, helps to increase our mental processing and our memory. It encourages us to connect with others, which is another pillar of stress mastery. And it helps us focus our attention. If you're a detail-oriented person, the stress of a deadline helps us get things done, right? Research tells us that a healthy peak in recovery, where we get a shot of stress and then recover quickly, is actually really good for the body. Like in the right dose, it helps to keep our cells healthy, and that keeps us young and vital. And without stress, to a certain degree, our lives would feel pretty meaningless. There is consistent research that finds the majority of the time, the things that cause us the most stress are also the things that bring us the most meaning. So I want you to imagine if you just waved a magic wand and all of your stressors disappeared, your work, your kids, your partner, your health, your school, your role as a caregiver. Would you feel good about that? Researchers actually, I thought this was so interesting because we all have this idea that, once we retire, it's going to be amazing, right? I mean, I love my work, so I can't imagine what retirement would look like. But there was a study done, a meta-analysis, which means they went back and looked at 20 years of long-term studies from multiple cultures, looking at both voluntary and involuntary retirement. And across the board, retirement was associated with a higher risk of depression. It's traditionally a period where stress and anxiety spike. So a lot of the time, the things that are stressing you out are the same things that give your life meaning. They're also often the things that are not within our control. So by taking care of the things that you can control, it will help shift your mentality and grow your capacity to handle the hard stuff. So 3 ways to jumpstart your stress mastery journey. Show, don't tell, notice your thoughts, and shift your stress perception. Here's the truth, my friends. Women business owners and those in senior management are facing unprecedented exhaustion, unsustainable workloads, increased caregiving responsibilities, and growing mental health demands. And it's a vicious cycle. And it kind of looks like this: exhaustion, overwhelm, stress, push harder, numb, repeat. Does that sound familiar to anyone? I believe that you can have a successful career or business and a thriving personal life without sacrificing one for the other. I've watched hundreds of professional women like you successfully bounce back from and avoid burnout, improve their relationships, be more present with their friends and family and colleagues, set better boundaries, and turn off work mode at the end of the day, reclaim their power, their energy, and their time, and wake up feeling excited and with purpose. Not every day. We're not all going to wake up every day feeling excited, right? Like every day is different, but more often, right? After years of feeling stressed out and resentful and uninspired. And they got there by embracing that stress mastery is an inside job. When you learn to manage your nervous system skillfully, to put your inner COO to work, you move out of survival mode and become the highest level performer you are able to be at work and in life. And I promised you a no fluff, no sales masterclass. So I'm just going to say this. If you want to continue this conversation and you've kind of seen yourself in some of what I've talked about, and you want to figure out what is my actual personal path to ambition without burnout and success without sacrificing all the other stuff, then I invite you to just book a call with me. It's free. It's no pressure. It's really just to explore what's going on in your life and how my tools might support you. Honestly, it's the call that I wish I had access to when I was struggling with chronic stress and burnout, because I was trying to do it all and be everything to everyone for way too long. So you can grab a spot at RebeccaVigalius.com/breakthrough call, or just grab a shot of that QR code there.